episode 10 of our Reflect series on Revelation. And today we move out of the letters to the seven churches and are moving to chapter 4. As we make that move, it can seem like quite an abrupt change going from these letters to churches to the rich and incredible imagery of the book of Revelation. But it shouldn't be an abrupt change for us. We need to remember that the whole book of Revelation is actually a letter. The visions we see in chapter 4 and beyond are being recorded in a letter to the whole church. I also think the seven letters were meant to prepare us for what is to come. In other words, here's what you need to do as the church to make yourself right so you can move forward in what you're going to read in the rest of the letter and what's going to come and what's going to happen so you can move forward in faith. I think there's a direct connection between the encouragement and correction in those letters and our ability to read or hear the visions that this letter contains. Now, as we go forward in Revelation, we're going to see that there are parts we go over faster and parts that will take longer. All in all, we'll have almost 40 sessions that we're doing on Revelation to get through the book. And even that's going to be tight in some ways. We could easily do 50, 60. So today we're going to look at chapter 4, which jumps right into the vision taking place in heaven where there's much worship. There's a lot of meat here, so we're going to touch on a bunch of it, but we'll look at that. So let's read chapter 4 first. Then as I looked, I saw a door standing open in heaven, and the same voice I had heard before spoke to me like a trumpet blast. The voice said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must happen after this." And instantly I was in the Spirit, and I saw a throne in heaven and someone sitting on it. The one sitting on the throne was as brilliant as gemstones, like jasper and carnelian, and the glow of an emerald circled his throne like a rainbow. 24 thrones surrounded him, and 24 elders sat on them. They were all clothed in white and had gold crowns on their heads. From the throne came flashes of lightning and the rumble of thunder. And in front of the throne were 7 torches with burning flames. This is the sevenfold Spirit of God. In front of the throne was a shiny sea of glass, sparkling like crystal. In the center and around the throne were 4 living beings, each covered with eyes, front and back. The first of these living beings was like a lion, the second like an ox, the third had a human face, and the fourth was like an eagle in flight. Each of these living beings had 6 wings, and their wings were covered all over with eyes, inside and out. Day after day and night after night, they kept on saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God, the Almighty, the one who always was, who is, and who is still to come." Whenever the living beings give glory and honor and thanks to the one sitting on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever, the 24 elders fall down and worship the one sitting on the throne, the one who lives forever and ever. And they lay their crowns before the throne and say, "You are worthy, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and they exist because you created what you please." Wow, what incredible imagery in this chapter. And so I just want to highlight some things to help us better understand some of that imagery. First, we see the phrase in verse 2, "in the Spirit." John is caught up in the Spirit. This is a phrase used a few times in Revelation. And it always seems to be a spot of transition in the letter. So this is the transition between the letters in chapters 2 and 3 and the current vision. Next, we get to the throne and the one who sits on it. And we read, "The one sitting on the throne is brilliant as gemstones, like jasper and carnelian, and the glow of an emerald circled his throne like a rainbow." So the one on the throne is God. And the image is one of beauty and majesty, but it's still pretty vague. What words can really describe the one true God? These stones are breathtaking and beautiful and give us that image, but there's no words can fully describe God. And we also see a rainbow of emeralds. Now, rainbow we know is from the story of Noah and the ark, a sign of God's covenant promise assuring creation would not be destroyed. Ezekiel had a vision of God where he is described as having the appearance of a rainbow, and yet this rainbow is shining like an emerald and circling the throne is quite unique. You see, we know rainbows are all colors, and yet emeralds are green. Some suggest that the emerald is a reminder of God's faithfulness and commitment to his creation. And this throne is so important to the book of Revelation. It's from where God reigns, and it directs the action we're going to see in the book of Revelation. It's from this throne that God saves his people and judges the oppressors. The throne is the image of God being king over all. If you think back to the Old Testament, Israel rejected God as their king. We're seeing here God is still king, and God actually is king over all. In the Old Testament, God is seated on the throne, and prophets saw God on his heavenly throne. For instance, Isaiah, where he says, "I saw the Lord high and exalted, seated on a throne, and the train of his robe filled the temple." The Old Testament sees God's throne ultimately as being in heaven, but they also saw God reigning from the temple where his presence was manifest. Now, there's two responses to God on the throne: fear from those who fight and resist God, worship from those who are his people. So our call as God followers is to worship in response to this image. There were 24 other thrones, seated on them were 24 elders. We're not certain who these elders are. There's so many thoughts and disagreements on this. It gets debated a lot. Some feel they are just spiritual beings like angels, and others that they're human. The number 24 may be a clue for us and seems important, being the total number of the tribes of Israel and the number of disciples put together. If that's the case, it shows the unity between the Old and New Covenant, the Old and New Testament for us, showing the unity between Israel and the Gentiles, with the hostility between them torn down by Jesus. I think that's a pretty good image, and I suspect that's along the right track. We also see in verse 6 that there are 4 living creatures around the throne. The thought is their faces, the lion, the ox, eagle, and human, represent the strongest and most powerful of their class of living creatures: wild beast, domesticated beast, bird, and human. They're covered with eyes, representing that all things are seen. And they just keep repeating the words, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, the one who always was, who is, and who is still to come." And when they do, the elders fall down, laying their crowns before God's throne, recognizing him as king over all, saying, "You are worthy, O Lord our God, to receive glory and honor and power, for you created all things, and they exist because you created what you pleased." We get a sense of the magnificence and glorification of God that heaven holds. All worship God. There are none equal to God. Even the 24 elders who have thrones fall prostrate before God, laying down their crowns in worship. I think for us to recognize the depth of worship in heaven, I wonder if we take our worship too lightly and too casually. Do we even begin to understand the majesty of the one we praise? Of the privilege it is to be able to come before God and worship? I suspect we'll not even begin to fully grasp that reality until we're actually in heaven ourselves. But I hope it gives us some reflection on our own worship. And I just love that worship. Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, the one who always was, who is, and who is still to come. What great worship for us to bring each day before God. Thanks for joining me for this session. We'll see you next time.